We are here today to start a new book called Ranger in Time. There are actually quite a few Ranger in Time books to read, and I have some in my library, and you might get hooked on them. This is actually the first one in the series, and it's Rescue on the Oregon Trail. We'll be reading about the Oregon Trail and what that's all about from back in the day. So you might enjoy Ranger in Time, and you could read others in the series. Chapter 1 is called 75 Pounds of Bacon. What? 75 pounds of bacon. I like bacon, but 75 pounds of it? I don't know about that. Sam Abbott lugged another sack of bacon to the wagon and sat down to wipe his forehead. 2 more to go. Pa swung the bacon into place beside a barrel of flour. Excuse me. Mr. Palmer says we need 75 pounds for each adult. Too bad Mr. Palmer isn't here to help us carry it, Sam said. Mr. Palmer had written the guidebook their father held as close as the Bible these days. It told the story of his trip to the Oregon Territory and gave suggestions for how other folks could make the same journey to the fresh air and rich farmland of the Willamette Valley. Most, like Sam's family, traveled to Independence, Missouri, or one of the other jumping-off points first. There they could get supplies and meet up with a wagon train. A wagon train? What is going on? Traveling together was safer. For each adult on the journey, Mr. Palmer said to pack 200 pounds of flour, 75 pounds of bacon, 30 pounds of pilot bread, and 10 pounds of rice. Sam and his father had packed some of that before the family set out from their farm near Boonville, Missouri 6 days ago. When they arrived in Independence, they'd purchased the rest at a busy trading post. This makes me think this isn't happening right now. Now they had to finish loading into the wagon. Sam's arms ached. How was he going to make it 2,000 miles to Oregon when he was already tuckered out just from loading the supplies? And how was he going to make it without Scout? They'd left their farm hound behind in Boonville with Uncle Jim and Aunt Cecilia. Pa said poor Scout was too old to come this far. He said it wouldn't be fair. Sam didn't think it was fair to make him go either, but nobody seemed to care about that. They were setting out on the trail this morning, now that the grass was grown enough for the oxen and horse to eat along the route. Sam, are you looking for Amelia? Are you looking after Amelia? His mother called from the wagon. She and Sam's older sister, Lizzie, were packing herbs and medicine into a small wooden chest. She's playing with Mabel the Pit and Peg. Sam slid off the back of the wagon and shuffled past his 3-year-old sister. Amelia was making her rag doll dance for the chickens they'd brought to lay eggs along the way. Sam was about to grab another sack of bacon when he heard a shout. Whoa! A horse had broken away from its owner and was tearing through the square. It reared up every time someone snatched at its reins. I can't read today. It raced this way and that, kicking up dust and knocking over barrels. Finally, the owner got it tied up to a post and turned his attention to an auction happening by the courthouse. $25! $25! Do I hear more? 25! There's a fine, strong mule, gentlemen. 25! Independence was full of travelers passing through. Some, like Sam's family, were making the trip to the Oregon Territory for better farmland. Others were going to California to search for gold. When some of them heard stories about disease, starvation, and snowstorms along the route, they decided they weren't up for the trip after all. Then they started auctioning off their mules to the highest bidders. Sam sat down on a heap of sacks and watched. He wondered what it would be like to set off on his own to find gold in a mountain stream. Sam, Pa called from the wagon. You can't eat your daydreams out on the trail. Load up the rest of that bacon. Sam stood up and sighed. He shoved a hand into his pocket and felt the folded-up friendship quilt squares his cousins had made. They hadn't finished in time to include them in the big quilt that Aunt Cecilia put together for their family, but they gave them to Sam anyway. He was glad. He liked having 3 small squares of home in his pocket. One had a picture of Scout, already outlined in thread. Another square showed the crooked apple tree by the fence. The third showed the Abbotts' farmhouse and barn pieced together with colorful scraps of fabric. Sam already missed home so much. Pa said it was all right to be sad, but your heart has room to love more than one place, he'd promised. Pa said the Oregon Territory was a land of milk and honey. He said it would be one of those places to love for sure. Still, Sam couldn't help worrying if it would be like Independence, a land of dust, smelly animals, and stale bread. At least they'd have bacon. He hugged another sack to his chest. "Amelia!" Sam's mother called out. She was searching around the wagon frantically. "Amelia!" Her eyes landed on Sam. "Where is she?" I was watching her, but..." Sam ran to where his sister had been. Her doll lay in the dirt next to the chicken coop. Sam picked it up and looked around. Amelia was gone. So they're loading up this wagon. It's all busy and bustling, and now Amelia is gone. Where do you think she is? Hope you are liking the start to Ranger in Time.